everybody. So this is so exciting. We are here to talk about the latest comic book movie, and I'm joined by my friend Trevor, and we are going to talk about Justice League.
Hi, everybody.
This is going to be probably an interesting discussion. We've talked about all of the superhero movies except for Logan this year, and Doctor Strange was our first one we did. And it's been pretty overwhelmingly, I would say, pretty positive. So I think this one's going to be an interesting discussion. So Justice League, it has taken many different forms over the years in the comics, right?
Oh, definitely. So the movie has a very similar lineup to what the original lineup was when it was created in 1960, where you have Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Lantern is the only one who wasn't mentioned, and Martian Manhunter. Martian Manhunter is probably a bit too hard to sort of transport in. He's too much of a Superman level character in terms of his powers and strength, so it was probably too difficult to put into the movies, at least at the moment. But he's an interesting character, and I don't know if you've seen the Justice League animated series from probably about 15 years ago now.
I haven't. I've seen the Batman animated series, but not Justice League.
Oh, it's quite good. Definitely worth checking out if you have the time.
Yeah, I'll have to.
But so in the comics then, it sort of became a thing where the lineup would change. Kind of, people would drop in, drop out. Different characters come in like Hawkman or the Elongated Man. People like that come and go until about 1985, 86, when DC did their first comics reboot post Crisis on Infinite Earths. And they decided to go total 180, and they filled it up with a lot of obscure characters and for a different format called Justice League International, which was very much more a UN-based Justice League team. You had people like the Blue Beetle. You had a Green Lantern, but it wasn't the traditional Green Lantern at the time. Batman was in it for a while. The character named Booster Gold. So you had all these various different characters, and then characters would come and go and sort of build. And the tone of it was very different too. It was it still had drama to it and superheroes, but it was also quite funny. And there was a bit more slapstick and character relations, which made it funny. And then so they went on that sort of way for about 10 years before we came back to the original 7 characters for a series called JLA with a writer named Grant Morrison, who's for DC is a pretty big deal. He's this guy, he's got really big ideas, knows the characters well, and he's very nostalgic, but sort of takes that nostalgia and brings new ideas to it. And it came with all these stories which are big in scope and sort of big ideas, which science fiction ideas. For instance, it's like time travel and different characters coming and going with shaking up things. And it sort of went on that way for a while, and then the different characters take their creators put their own spin on before they did the reboot again in 2011, where, like I said before, they sort of took a similar lineup to what the movie is, and the Justice League movie is kind of based on that origin.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, because I knew that Green Lantern and I heard Martian Manhunter that they were usually or sometimes included in the Justice League. So that's interesting to hear. And I am sure that it has taken many different tones over the years, just like Batman has.
Oh, definitely, yeah. So, for instance, and it's also going over throughout the years as well, because comics sort of changed and evolved. Went from being exclusively made for children to a wide audience. Yeah, it's so the tone does change, and it depends on who's writing it and where the tone changes. Yeah.
Or sort of overall thoughts of this latest Justice League, your overall response.
It wasn't terrible. Like I wasn't like, for instance, when I was watching Suicide Squad or Batman vs Superman, I was visibly frustrated.
Right.
This movie, I wasn't that so much. So that's always a good sign. There were some redeeming factors, but yeah, I wouldn't say it was an amazing movie by any means.
Yeah, so I left feeling overall entertained, but I definitely I feel very bipolar about the movie. I've seen it twice, and my second experience was very weird. My first experience was at a screening, so of course everybody's going to be very excited about fan screening. Everybody was super pumped. But then my second experience was the theater was pretty sparse. And there was a large group of it looked like sort of college-aged boys that were there, and they were very hostile against the movie from the beginning. And it was such a weird experience, like being in a movie theater with like people like that. They were like, one of them got up in the middle of the movie and was like, "This movie sucks," and stormed out. Yeah, they like booed at the end. It was very surreal and weird. And so I kind of left feeling like almost maybe even overly defensive. I'm like, it was not that bad. I mean, I'd way rather see this than Suicide Squad or even something like Green Lantern or something like that. I thought it was much better than that.
Yeah, that is bizarre. I've never been, well, actually, there's only been one movie where anything close to that.
Yeah.
That was the room where you're meant to yell at stuff. But yeah, that's I don't know if that in the US that's a common thing to happen.
No.
But in Australia, everyone's pretty quiet in the city generally.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in ones where they were very boisterous for the movie, with Star Wars particularly. Any Star Wars movie I've seen, people are pretty excited. But as far as people being just like hostile against it, and I couldn't tell if they were upset that if they were hardcore DCEU fans, and so they were upset that it was lighter, or if they were Marvel fans that were just like hating on DC. I don't know. But yeah, they were not happy with the movie. So that was a very surreal experience. But overall, like I said, I'm very like half and half. Like I pretty much feel like, and we'll dive into kind of what my pluses and minuses were, but I feel like pretty much every response that I've read, I'm like, yeah, they're right. And then people that are positive, like, yep, they're right. With this one, because I was really torn about whether to, because I do on my blog, I do frown worthy or smile worthy, and I was really torn, like, should I go, because I don't know, I just went back and forth on it. But I finally did go smile worthy on it, and so we'll talk about why. But overall, I felt like there was just enough there that entertained me to overcome some of the problems. So
yeah,
it'd be interesting. So you already mentioned a little bit. I was just going to ask, like, what your overall feeling about the DCEU, the various films, has been. What do you think of Man of Steel?
So Man of Steel, I ended up seeing that it was a bizarre kind of situation. I was in holidays in New Zealand at the time, and we had a bit of spare time, so we saw that. But the screen stopped working, or there's like some big shadow over the screen.
Oh no!
Halfway through the movie, which they didn't fix for 10 minutes. But in terms of the movie itself, I enjoyed sections of it. The ending really killed it for me, though.
Yeah.
It was just there was very Snydery ending.
Yeah.
With the destruction that didn't need to happen, and the fact that Superman didn't seem all that remorseful for the destruction, or the fact that he had to kill Zod either.
Mm-hmm.
So I left a bit frustrated, but they ticked enough boxes, but Superman, like proper Superman boxes, which I didn't mind. So I'm sort of half and half on that movie always.
Mm-hmm.
Going forward onto other movies, hated Suicide Squad.
Yeah,
I saw that one on the airplane, and like I didn't ever saw that in the cinemas. So that was probably the best way to see it, is because on the airplane.
That's a bad one to see on the airplane, because there's lots of plane crashes, helicopters.
There's 3 helicopter crashes in it, and they don't need to be there. It's like the way they frame the scene is, okay, a helicopter crash. And the Joker didn't need to be in that movie. He didn't actually do anything.
No. Yeah, agreed.
Uh,
he was a terrible Joker too. I hated Jared Leto's Joker.
Oh,
Not
yeah,
a
it was
fan.
horrible. It was horrible. It was like the teenager, what a teenager thinks the Joker should be.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they're going for.
He spends like all day placing those knives all around the carpet. For why? What is he doing? I don't know. He was super annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Batman vs Superman. I finally finished watching it like 2 days ago.
It only took you like 2 years.
There was probably about a 3-month gap in between first half and the second half. But
yeah,
finally finished watching it, and I was still frustrated in the second half.
Yeah.
Bit of a dud.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just it was the tone, it was the destruction, and the stupid characterizations, and it was all kinds of things.
Yeah. And we both liked Wonder Woman a lot.
Yeah. And
so you guys can listen to our podcast on Wonder Woman, because we did that. We both loved that. And so I think that covers all of them.
I think so, yeah.
For me, I did not like Man of Steel. It made me very depressed because I just felt like this character that should be somebody that is hope for truth, justice, and the American way, like they say, was like, I don't know. I felt like he was mopey, and I did not like the way they flashed the flashback structure going back and forth, and I thought it ended up just being kind of boring and was just a slog. And I know it just took this like hopeful character that I loved and just made it into this. I hated the end. Yeah. Like it's one thing, like if they had just stopped at Smallville, but then they have to go on. It's like you got to destroy all of Smallville and then all of Metropolis, and then, the Zod snap neck, and just like, it was just, I just didn't like it. I hated the scene where his father dies. I hated the scene where he saves all the kids, but the dad's like, well, yeah, you should have just let them drown. It's just like, what is wrong with these people? And I just felt like they were it was actively hostile against Superman and everything that Superman stood for. And I really didn't like that. And it's not like you have to be like super campy. And we'll talk about that in this movie to embrace kind of the type of character that Superman is. You can make it modern and still a little gritty without it being like such, without like assaulting the character, which is what I felt like they basically did. And and I didn't think him and Lois had any chemistry. They didn't spend that much time together. That wasn't fun to me. And it was just, I don't know, I just didn't like it. And then Batman v Superman, I admired its ambition. It was a very ballsy movie, which I thought was impressive, but I just didn't think it worked. And I hated that they killed Superman. That made me really mad. And I felt like, because we all knew it wasn't real. And so when they're expecting us for like 20 minutes, the last 20 minutes of the movie, to have like 2 funerals and like feel like just this dirge or whatever, like we were supposed to feel so sad when I know it's not real, it really irritated me. I felt like I was being emotionally manipulated to take a character I love after you've already beat him down for 2 movies, and just and then the final stroke it was just to kill him. I was like, oh
yeah.
And and I hated Lex Luthor. I thought he was super annoying.
Oh, that was the worst. He was just talked in metaphor, like bad metaphors the whole time with this weird twitch.
Yeah, it was really annoying, and like it's like all the God talk, like and I was not a fan. I liked Wonder Woman, but I didn't like Doomsday. It's just a frustrating film, and so I didn't care for it. I guess I didn't hate it quite the way that some people hated it. Like my brother, I couldn't even get him to go to Justice League because he was like too emotionally damaged. My brother was Superman. But anyway, and then Suicide Squad, it like didn't even feel like a movie. It felt like they literally just like put clips together, and like I'm like, did we really just spend like 25 minutes with a character looking through a binder? Like, what?
Yeah, I feel like that there could have been a better movie in there, but I think the Batman vs Superman reaction meant that when they did a lot of cutting and reshooting, they created a worse film.
Oh yeah, and like, I mean, you just had such sloppiness. Like when Katana gets on the plane, it's like, yeah, this is Katana. She knows how to yield a sword or whatever, something like that. And you're just like, wow, good job with your character introductions. You spent 25 minutes with a woman looking through a binder, but you couldn't like give Katana an introduction. Yeah, and the Joker was terrible, and yeah, it was just Enchantress was awful. And you were expected to believe these characters were like a family, but like there was no justification for that. These are supposed to be bad guys. So I don't know. It was ridiculous.
Well, yeah, that whole family thing. It's like the Fast and the Furious kind of. You just say that they're family enough times, and you lead to believe it.
Yeah, and they're like, we're supposed to believe Diablo, would like, and that they would all choose to like keep together, even though they're supposed to be these horrible bad guys. And then like, and yet they're expected to be so loyal to each other. And then Amanda Waller, right? That's her name, right?
Yeah.
Like she just like kills all those people. And you're just like, what? Where did that come from? Like that was, to me, that felt like way out of nowhere. And I'm just like she's the true villain of the movie. And it was so bizarre. Terrible, terrible, terrible. And so, yeah, then we get up to Wonder Woman, which I just loved so much, of course. And so I have to admit, I think part of the reason why I was a little nice to this movie is that I had very low expectations going into it. Very low expectations. And also that has to do a little bit with the rocky production that you couldn't help but hear about, with Zack Snyder having to leave with his tragedy with his family, and then Joss Whedon coming in and reshoot. Like there were reports that there was like 75% reshoots, and who knows what's really true or what's really not.
Yeah, apparently they reckon it was about 20% of it was Whedon in the end.
Yeah.
In the end product. Yeah,
I think so. And so anyway, you couldn't help but it kind of had low expectations for it. Whereas like, excuse me, whereas like something like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I had super high expectations for because I love the first one so much. And so it is a different experience.
Oh, yeah.
And anyway, so yeah, that was kind of going into it. And so overall for me, with this movie, with Justice League, I felt like the heroes, I'm a hero person with the movie. A lot of people complain about bad villains. I don't really care about bad villains as long as the villain doesn't actively annoy me, like an Electro or like really annoyed me, or the Joker in Suicide Squad, or like or Lex Luthor, like a character that really annoys me, then I have problems with. But if they're just kind of, I don't really care. Like for me, a villain can just be a tool to make the heroes shine. And so for me, the heroes shined pretty decently in this movie. I really liked pretty much all of them. And I loved what they did with Superman. So we'll talk about that. And that made me really happy. And so that was a big key for me, like leaving with a positive feeling. But on the other hand, I can't deny the problems in this movie. The plot was problem. With these mother boxes and stuff, like it was pretty weak.
It was weak, yeah. The whole idea, like it's a very video game kind of plot where collect 3 items and something happens.
Yeah.
The
plot was weak, and the visuals were pretty weak. I'm not a fan of the way Zack Snyder directs visuals. But they looked, speaking of video games, they looked very video game heavy, very, 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 and very like orange and gray all the time.
Yeah. That's very Zack Snyder. He loves a good color grade.
Yeah. And there were a lot of people that complained about the last act of Wonder Woman looking not great. But this was like that through the whole movie. It just looked terrible, in my opinion. And the villain was pretty lame. Like it wasn't a great villain. I didn't really care, but it was a pretty bad villain. With Steppenwolf.
Steppenwolf was he was a pretty weak villain in terms of he had no characterization. It was just he was goal oriented, but it was a pretty weak goal to start with. And it's like, well, why do I care? There's no motivation. There was like one line which could, if they had like, which they could have expanded upon, and it would have given some motivation, where he sort of mentioned Darkseid, because Steppenwolf was meant to be Darkseid, like a general in his army, and they could have added some kind of power struggle or something along those lines. It would have made it more interesting, and would have cared about his motivations more. But it was nothing. It was just I just want power kind of bad guy.
Yeah, it was super one note, super bland, and again, that it didn't really bother me super much, but he looked really pretty bad too. It was very similar to Ares at the end of Wonder Woman as far as the visuals. It looked pretty, but it was just more of it. Like in Wonder Woman, it's a shorter period of time. And at least like, I feel like during those segments in Wonder Woman, she's like undergoing still transition. So it's still, and you've just seen Steve, die. So like you're still, at least for me, like it didn't kill it for me, those bad visuals, because there was still emotion going on. And there were definitely times where you could tell this like friction between Joss Whedon and Zack Snyder's points of view. Would you agree?
I definitely agree. Yeah, because Whedon's very much comes from the fanboy kind of perspective, similar to say a Kevin Smith, perhaps.
That's a good.
So it obviously is going closer to the source material and the characters, a lighter tone, and that it sort of comes to friction where Snyder's very much about grim and gritty, grim dark, taking things to the extreme. And
well, and just his aesthetic is very like CGI kind of heavy, very I don't know, like he just has a different aesthetic than Whedon. Like Whedon, of course, uses CGI, but his perspective is more from a like more of a classic comic book, more dialogue influenced, more just a lighter influence. And so you could definitely feel that tension in between there. But I really thought that it was actually pretty funny. Like that was one of the reasons that kind of kept me somewhat invested, that I was actually laughing throughout. I thought that some people said that that Flash fell flat. I didn't feel that way. I thought he was funny. I liked Ezra Miller in the role. And to me, it kind of worked. His like idiosyncrasies and his his anxieties. I thought were funny. What did you think?
I didn't really like him. I'm a big Flash fan, and that didn't feel like the Flash to me.
Oh, okay.
In terms of that felt more like a Sheldon Cooper in a Flash costume, which I do not like the Big Bang Theory at all. So that sort of really frustrated me. For me, the Flash is very much a sort of a bleeding heart kind of character. He's very
sincere.
He's very sincere, very hard on himself in terms of where if he makes a mistake, he's very hard on himself and gets down in the dumps, but then finds a way to be very hopeful and uplift himself, which a tiny bit of that, and that was probably more the Whedon side. But overall, it was too far removed from me.
Okay. Do you like the TV show, the Flash TV show?
Yeah, I've only seen the first season. I'm pretty far behind, but I do enjoy it, even though it is a bit campy. But although I don't mind campy as well, but I like in the whole CW kind of vibe to it, which it sometimes can be frustrating or a bit silly. But overall, I generally enjoy it.
Okay, cool. That's interesting. And what did you think of Aquaman? His introduction and his character?
I'm in two minds again about that. Just very much they got Momoa based on the fact that Aquaman, for some reason, people who never read Aquaman comics think that he's really lame. the whole talk to fish thing, which Batman Affleck kept bringing up throughout the movie. Where in the comics he's a king between two worlds. He gets in plenty of action, kind of sort of this royalty kind of drama and all that kind of thing, plus the superheroes and underwater. And the way that it did in the movie, though, I feel like it was an overcompensation for that whole idea that Aquaman is lame. So you get this guy. So they've sort of gone, instead of just doing like a good interpretation of the comic, they've gone taken it to the extreme end where he's just, I'm a badass, I'm going to, jump up and fly and stab things. And
yeah, I feel like they were trying to make him the Thor of this kind of group, kind of character. Good. And it didn't quite get that close. Maybe just because I'm so into Chris Hemsworth and his performance. But I feel like that's kind of, and like to the advantage of the Avengers, we already had a whole Thor movie, so we knew him, but we haven't had that for Aquaman or Flash. So we haven't had a chance to kind of breathe those characters.
Yeah, and that's some of the problem with the movie, in the sense that you've introduced Batman, you've introduced Wonder Woman, and you've introduced Superman, so you can get on the ground running pretty easily. But you haven't introduced Aquaman yet. You haven't introduced Flash or Cyborg yet. So you got to spend time introducing them, either give them an origin, and that where, for instance, the first Avengers movie, you didn't have to worry about that, so you can hit the ground running a lot faster. You just give a tiny bit of recap. Yeah,
I mean, except for Hawkeye, that was the only one that you didn't really know going into Avengers.
Yeah, definitely. He's the only one that he had one scene in one of the previous movies. I think it was the first Thor movie he was in, for 5 seconds.
Okay. Forgot that. Yeah, so I think that did make it harder for sure. And also it was easier to be more forgiving of Wonder Woman because we already had investment in all of those characters, and maybe even Batman a little bit. But Cyborg, I struggled with a little bit. I mean, I felt like his journey was supposed to be sort of the emotional heart of the film, but I don't know. I just didn't really connect with his character all that well.
Yeah, well, I didn't mind his character development. There was sort of that whole confidence boost and the learning of his skills. I didn't mind that. The comics have struggled with him a bit too. He was originally a member of the Teen Titans, and then there was probably about 5 or 6 years ago when DC did their reboot of continuity, or soft reboot of continuity. They made him a founding member of the Avengers, of the Justice League, and so that's where the movie's taken inspiration from. But they've always had this problem where they've told the same story over and over again of, is he more man than machine, or vice versa? And some of that came through at the start, and he sort of built this confidence, but it's sort of, to me, it's a bit of a retread. But yeah, I didn't mind it because there was something there, and they got past that. But yeah, I feel like if they did it again, it would be frustrating.
Like Jason Momoa, I thought he was pretty charming. I think the scene where Wonder Woman tricks him into being truthful, that was hilarious. I love that. That just screamed Joss Whedon, and I really enjoyed it. That was really funny, and he was, I thought, pretty charming. I'm not gonna say he's Chris Hemsworth charming, but he was pretty good, I thought. But I was nervous. I'm nervous about Aquaman though, because I thought that the underwater stuff was. It was pretty bad, I thought. And like the fact that they had to make an air bubble for Hera and him to talk was so lame. I'm like, are they going to do that for the Aquaman movie? Like every time these creatures that live underwater, every time they talk, they have to create an air bubble? That was so dumb.
Yeah, that was dumb. They live underwater. You'd think that they'd be able to talk underwater.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, hopefully it's one of those things that they just ignore that whole thing. And James Wan, decides to, just ignore that and just do his own thing.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the advantage of the DCEU is that there is a level of director-centricness to it.
Also, his powers were a little fuzzy to me. Not being somebody who understands them completely well, it seemed like it was just sort of whatever was needed in the scene, all of a sudden he could do. I was like a little confused there about Aquaman.
Yeah, so his skill set's meant to be so he can psychically communicate with fish. It's not so much a talking with fish, it's sort of like a prodding of suggestion. So, or communicating in the sense of getting information. But also he's got a level of strength, a super strength as well, in a sense of it is super swimming kind of deal. And so this general strength, which then sort of translates when he's out of the water. So he can jump really high because he's got super strong legs because he swims so fast.
Oh, okay. Jump really high. Okay. And is his trident kind of like Thor's hammer?
Yeah, I'd say so. It's a regular prop that he uses, I guess. It's never been sort of any consistency in terms of what weapons he uses. Or, for instance, there was a period in the 90s where he lost his hand and he had a hook. So yeah, it just.
That is funny. How do you feel about Wonder Woman and the Amazons in their section in this?
Yeah, it wasn't as good as in actual Wonder Woman itself. I feel like it wasn't the choreograph. It wasn't as good. There was that bit when they were on the horses, which wasn't too bad. It was there was moments of it that were redeeming, and then other bits were just like, oh, it's not as good as Wonder Woman. So I just kept thinking in my head. I can understand the criticisms for the costumes as well.
Yeah.
It's like, why wouldn't you just recycle the costumes from the Wonder Woman movie? It'd save you $1, and it's consistency as well.
Right. And you could say that, of course, their costumes would have evolved over all these years, but since World War I, but they're not stupid. The Amazons aren't stupid. They're not, because people are like, oh, well, they wore these in some of them in the Wonder Woman movie, but definitely not as many, that's for sure. And they weren't in battle with those clothes on. And so the idea that they'd be going into battle with nothing protecting their stomachs, nothing protecting, it was just very Zack Snyder-y. I'm sorry. And the way that I didn't really notice it the first time, I have to say, but the second time that I saw it, the way that the camera would kind of go at this low angle on Wonder Woman, and you get this it was very Fast and Furious-y.
There was one or two butt shots I noticed.
Yeah, she always has to be wearing leather, and I have to get that. Oh dear.
Yeah, there was a couple butt shots in there which didn't need to be there.
No. It was still, Gal Gadot is just so warm and so lovely and so great that I couldn't hate her perform. I couldn't hate the character just because she's so great. And I did think that it was pretty interesting, this idea of Bruce challenging her on her leadership, and getting her to not just sort of follow, because she's scared that her actions will cause harm, just like they caused harm to Steve in her eyes. And that she has to be, sort of responsible for that. And I thought that was pretty interesting. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I like that. It was a bit different as well for this. We haven't seen anything like that really in the Avengers. It's been for instance, in the Avengers, it's very much Captain America or Iron Man, being the leader. And it's not like they've said to Thor, okay, it's time for you to step up and be a leader, show some initiative or anything like that. Where this is quite interesting in the sense that Wonder Woman has leadership qualities, and obviously Batman can see that. So it's an interesting way of building the character, especially since she's had so much development already. And it's a new avenue to go down, which you can take further as well.
Well, and if they decide, I don't know what DC is going to do. We can talk about that a little bit later, but I felt like they did create a little bit of a loophole for Wonder Woman 2 when they said that she said something like, I've always helped, or I've always done what I can, but I've never wanted to like be the leader. I can't remember exactly how she says it. So I think they give her a little bit of an out if they want, a little loophole where she was still sort of involved, but more in the shadows, more in the sidelines than taking this like lead. So, but anyway, so I was pretty happy with Wonder Woman. I just loved her so much and the character. I was fine with that. And so Batman in this, did it feel like the same character to you as Batman v Superman, or I don't know, how did you feel about Batman?
No, I feel like Affleck wasn't really trying that hard.
Mm-hmm.
You could sort of see, and you could tell by all the market, like all the promotional stuff, that he doesn't want to be there. He's made a bad decision. I can easily guess that at the start he would have been very excited. And he's like, yeah, man, not everyone gets to be Batman, and I'm going to be Batman, and I'm going to do well, and I'm going to be able to direct a Batman movie, and it's going to be awesome. And then I think when Batman vs Superman sort of came into production, and there was this friction, and then the end product and the criticism around it, and it just became this building thing, and it's one of those things where he's just looking for a way out now.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I thought he did have some interesting moments. The idea of him being sort of the mortal one of the group is interesting to sort of explore. But yeah, I could definitely sense some weariness in the character and in the actor.
Yeah, and I think they tried to put that weariness into the character by saying that he's been operating for 20 years already.
Right. Yeah. So so let's talk about Superman. So this is what really, I guess, won me over. I have to admit, I think they drew out the rebirth of Superman, and they didn't really, I think, adequately explain why they would bring him back. But I mean, it seems unlikely with the same thing that Lex Luthor had done to create Doomsday, that they would then be like, this is a great idea.
Superman. There was some debate, but for some reason the debate happened, and then they just decided, okay, that's what's going to happen. And everyone just went along with it.
This is weaker ground than creating Ultron. I mean,
it is. I knew Superman would come back, not because the trailer, it could have easily been a dream. That Superman scene where he's with it at the front of the house, that could have been a Lois Lane dream.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to see Superman back, but I knew that Superman would come back.
Sure.
Because in the comics, they made a big deal of killing him in the 90s, back in the 90s. It made like the news. It was sort of this huge deal, and people actually thought he was dead. Right. Of course, a couple months later, came back to life and saved the day. And
yeah, what do you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It's in traditional Superman style.
Yeah. So, what do you feel about Superman? Because a lot of people think, oh, he's a really boring character. I mean, this is one of the ways that we first met. Is I was asking you about Superman because I never felt that he is a boring character, because he's somebody that, yes, he's strong, but he also is there's a purity to him, which I don't think inherently makes you boring. And he's a very hopeful character, and he is somebody who wants things to be good, which I think can make him really interesting. And but a lot of people think he's really boring. Like, where are you at on Superman?
I'm pro Superman.
Yay!
Yes. It's all about the execution. Because Superman is so powerful, so strong, people can just go down this. You end up going down this path where the only stories they tell are ones where Superman fights increasingly stronger characters, and that's it. And that becomes boring because it's sort of just the same thing over and over again. Especially back in the 60s when they sort of had like two or three Superman comics going at the one time because he was so popular. And each month was a different story. they were quite good in shaking it up, where it would be more about Superman using his powers to teach Jimmy Olsen a lesson, or it would be they'd just throw like different threats where it's more Superman had to solve puzzles by using his powers as opposed to just continually punching the
right.
But yeah, and then the fact that the characterization of Superman itself as well, it's fantastic. The whole truth, justice, and the American way. It's like a very hopeful, uplifting character, which was one of the reasons I was so frustrated with Batman vs Superman, because I didn't get any of that.
Right.
Really. This movie did a lot more of it, which of the positive for Superman that I like. We had like the bit at the start with the kids in the home movie on the phone where he was interviewing Superman, and they had there's the questions they ask and the responses. It was very much more the Superman that it should be, as opposed to angry Superman.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the worst scene for me in Batman v Superman was when there's those people that are on the roof of their house and they painted the Superman sign, and he's like, how did they get that paint, first of all? But they're like, he's like just like looming over, just like looking at them, and I'm like,
yeah,
no, that's not what he would do.
No, he just go in and say it.
Yeah, exactly.
And
rescue them.
And Superman would have remorse as well for if he's like I mentioned with the Flash. Superman's a bit of a bleeding heart himself as well, where if he makes a mistake or he has to kill somebody or something like that, he shows remorse. It ruins him emotionally in terms of where the end of Man of Steel, there was none of that. He showed no remorse for killing. They showed a little bit of he didn't want to make sure that those people that the Zod's laser eyes were going to shoot.
Right.
Make sure they didn't get shot, but he had shown no remorse for killing Zod at all. There was, which they should have had then. Yeah.
I feel like the most interesting, and I'll post a link. I did an article, blog called "How to Fix Superman," and this is one of the first things we did together, where I talk about. I think the most interesting thing you can do with Superman is to force him to make choices, because like he has all this power, but there's still so much that he can't control. And so when he has to make a choice between this thing and this thing, that's what makes it interesting. And to see like such a pure character being forced to make choices is interesting. And I really like a comic where there's this character named Bloodsport, I believe. And he's like this like violent racist. And he just feels like all these people on welfare that are stealing from everything and taking jobs away, and he's just very, very racist. And he takes over this whole apartment basically like hostage. And so like Superman cannot control the fact that this person, whatever, is racist. He can't fix that with his strength, and so he has to figure out how he's going to, solve the situation, which makes it interesting to me. And so I think that's the way, if people want to bring in darkness into the character of Superman, that's the way to do it. Have him confront evil that he can't control.
And that's a great idea. That's definitely. That's like there was a story. I can't remember when it was, but they did something similar with that too, where it was with domestic violence. It was a matter of like the people, the neighbors next to Clark and Lois. The husband was beating the wife, but it's not one of those things that Superman could solve in terms of just busting in there. And so it was something that he had to solve as Clark Kent. And then how you solve that as well.
Yeah, in many ways it's similar to in Wonder Woman, because she has so much power, but she's put in contact. That's what made it so moving for me, is that she's put in contact with war and evil, like human frailty, and she cannot fix it. And that's what she learns through the course. She learns about human nature and how weak we are, and that's devastating for her. And so that's what makes her journey so moving and so great. So, but I felt like this movie was a huge step in the right direction for Superman. It didn't get there by all means, but so like, yeah, it's really silly how they bring him back, why they bring him back. And also even like him, I was nervous at first because I'm like, oh man, we're going to get, because there were some images beforehand of him in the black suit. And I'm like,
oh yeah,
oh dear. And so I was nervous about that. And
yeah.
so anyway, but so some of his like broodiness and beating up Batman and stuff like that at the beginning, I'm like, oh no. Then we get that really, we get a really nice moment.
I did like that scene, yeah.
Yeah, right. And yeah, it was just like, oh no. But then we get this. I thought it was a really nice scene at the house between him and Lois and him and his mom. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it was that human element. It was the bleeding heart Superman where he was. Yeah.
It was good.
No, it was good. Yeah.
Yeah, and so then he becomes your hero that we've wanted for 3 movies, and when I don't know, like just the last third of this movie, I just thought was so joyful, and I know other people didn't like it. I liked it. I thought it was just like to see him like carry that giant like house and like
the building, yeah.
And him to just be like, I'm fighting for truth and justice. I was like, yes, I was so happy. And you get in that same part, you get, that scene that we're talking about with Aquaman and Wonder Woman. And I don't know, I just really enjoyed the heroes in that last third. I really thought it was fun. And it's like, this is the Superman that I wanted. They did it right. And it was just like, I wanted to send Joss Whedon a thank you card. Be like, thank you. Because I know this was you. I know this was you.
Definitely Whedon, yeah.
There's no way Zack Snyder would have done that. I really don't think with Superman.
Nah, but yeah, no, there would have been a lot. Well, I was going to say there'd be a lot more destruction, but I don't know because his movies have been so criticised about that destruction. I could tell they took it to somewhere deserted.
Yeah.
And they purposely showed that family.
That was so
constantly, and that was to have that human connection so that they could be saved, and there'd be no loss of human life within the context of the final battle, because those final battles have been very much, half a city is destroyed every time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it looked terrible, but I don't know. I just enjoyed the heroes in that scene. I thought they were so fun, and in the end, that's what I go to these movies for. And I was just, I had a huge smile on my face when he said truth and justice. I was like, yes, I was so happy. And and like him sort of egging on Flash, I thought was really funny. And I don't know, I was just so happy to see the Superman that felt some sense of resemblance to the character that I know.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And yeah, but that thing with the family was really weird. I was like, they should have cut that. It didn't work.
No, they didn't. It didn't work, but they needed something in there to give that human element to the.
I don't think they did. Like, if you think about the airport scene in Civil War, there's really no like human casualties, and it's super entertaining.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
so I don't think they really did. It was just sort of distracting. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the DCEU does next, because we do have Aquaman that's already finished, that's done, but you just know we're going to get, of course, Wonder Woman 2, but I don't know, because like there's reports that this movie might make under $100 million this weekend, which is shocking, like if that's true.
I mean, it should be making more than Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah,
I mean, that made 127 million.
Right.
It should be. When you have 6 characters come together, you think that it's like a license to print money.
Especially after Wonder Woman was such a big, it's going to make less money probably than Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman made 103 opening weekend. And yes. I mean, to have Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman in your movie and it make under 100 million is shocking. And so I don't know, I'm very curious what they're going to do next.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's one of those things. It's at the moment, it's going to have to wait and see what the second week drop is going to be like. Like, I know Batman vs Superman had a giant drop, and a lot of that was because they had a very strong opening weekend based on they heavily pushed pre-sale tickets. I noticed it was. I didn't notice that heavy emphasis for this movie. So I think it's going to have a softer drop, which then might save it.
It's going to be interesting because I think that there is something to the fact that this is less less emblematic of people rejecting this movie more than people really rejecting Batman v Superman. And because you've seen it in a lot of franchises where, like, for instance, this is a funny example, but this year with Smurfs The Lost Village, I think that movie making very little was more about the people disliking the previous film more than people rejecting this film. And I don't know, there's just a lot of sort of ones like that where people get soured on a franchise because of a bad entry, and then it won't really show it on that one, but the next one is when they'll show it.
Well, yeah, it's also, it might be a level of fatigue as well in terms of the box office has been a bit weak this year with some of the big films, and like there's been a heavy emphasis on franchises, and there's been a lot of franchises which have underperformed or have at the tail end of it. For instance, like your Pirates of the Caribbean, where it's like you don't need it. It's like it's in the 5th installment, and no one cares about that anymore.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, like Marvel pretty much has been immune to that. They have been able to, I think, just make their movies funny enough and enjoyable enough to enough people, and that they really haven't had a box office dud yet, amazingly enough.
No, yeah. And I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that the movies are very different. There's a lot of tonal differences in them. For instance, Ant-Man is very different to, say, Thor, or, you know, it's sort of they've been able to make different movies within this same bubble.
Mm-hmm. But they're all very, like, family-friendly, I would say, for the most part. There's some, like, maybe your Guardians of the Galaxy that are a little risque and pushing the envelope. But, like, as opposed to, I would not take a child to Batman v Superman.
Oh, no, definitely not.
No. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do next, because supposedly we're going to get a Batgirl movie from Joss Whedon. I mean, it seems like every day you get a new announcement from WB about what they're going to do. A Flashpoint movie, there's going to be Shazam, there's going to be all this stuff. Yeah,
I got a feeling that most of those won't get made. Yeah. I feel it's going to be a matter of where the fatigue is. Mm-hmm. And they've pretty much put these into like pre-production just in case Justice League's a big hit and there's this continual demand. So they'll pick the big ones. So Batman will definitely get made. Wonder Woman 2 will get made. Mm-hmm. I think the Flash one will get made, even though that's pretty rocky pre-production so far with a change of directors already and a change of scope.
For which one?
For the Flash.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So they've had I don't think they've got a new director yet, but
they've had like 4 or 5 that have come and gone.
Yeah, they've had multiple directors come and gone, and they changed the scope. There was meant to be more of a probably closer to the TV show in terms of the whole father in jail and solving that issue. Mm-hmm. And that was the main story around it. So now being more Flashpoint, where I think Flashpoint is going to be a way to, in very DC style, to reboot this universe, mm-hmm. or at least do it in a way that all these changes happen where, for instance, their continuity might either be so warped that it's brand new, and you mm-hmm. can say that Batman vs Superman never happened.
Yeah. They're going to Days of Future Past it.
Yeah, pretty much. It's going to be the Days of Future Past, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that we can officially say R.I.P. Zack Snyder, DCEU. Like that he shouldn't want to do any more of these superhero movies. Like he should want to move on to something different.
I think he needs to move on to something different, like some of his own projects or something like that. Yeah. Warner Brothers will keep him around because they just seem to love him for some reason.
He'll probably be like executive producer. Christopher Nolan was still listed as executive producer on this one. I think his involvement was probably very minimal, but nevertheless, he was still listed.
Yeah, I think he's only that because they want him attached to it, but he just wants to. He probably got some agreement where he can do his own stuff with Warner Brothers.
Right. So yeah, I think in the end for me, this movie, like I said it right when I came up. I was like, I think the visuals are a hot mess. I think the plot is a hot mess. I think the villain is super boring, but I don't really care about that. So those are the downsides to me. The pluses for me, I loved Superman. I liked Wonder Woman. I actually liked Flash. I thought he was funny. I liked the witty dialogue that Joss Whedon added. And so overall, like I left feeling positive, and I left having a good time, even though I went to that super grumpy screening. And I don't know, like I in general, like I feel like I don't know, if you don't like offend me and you don't like, you're not sort of, there's certain movies, certain types of movies that really bother me because they're more like assaulting me with their message, I guess, or like killing Superman. That if you don't do something like that actively like irritates me and frustrates me, then I'm generally like pretty easy to please. And at least I feel like I am. And but I would probably still give this movie like a 5.5 out of 10. Like it's just barely positive to me. Like, and anybody that's like, this is a terrible movie that has a terrible plot and terrible special effects and visuals and action, I'm like, yep, it is. You're not wrong. I don't know. What's your final kind of takeaway from it?
I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10.
Basically the same.
Tonally, it was much better, and it was a good course of correction that was very much needed. And in terms of into the future, I think the way to go. Visually, I didn't notice it as much as you did. Obviously, I thought it was run of the mill. I didn't think it was bad or good. Mm-hmm. And I didn't notice Henry Cavill's missing mustache.
The mustache. That's how you could tell that there were a lot of scenes in the reshoots. I'm just sure that Joss Whedon changed Superman the most of any of the characters because there were a lot of fishy mustache areas. But if nobody had told me that had happened, I wasn't kind of looking for it, then I would never have noticed.
Yeah, well, I did look a couple times and I didn't notice it, but I think that was just more that maybe I wasn't a very good spotter. I wasn't looking at the right times.
Yeah, it's a little fuzzy.
Characterizations. I enjoyed all the characterizations except for maybe the Flash, but that's just more of a fan nitpick more than anything.
Sure.
Which I try not to do, but it's come through in this sense. And if they only had if they only had the one end credit scene, we'll talk about that in a second. If they only had the one of them, I would have been fine with it. The second one, I came out. I came out with very negative.
Ends on a bad note.
Ends on a bad note. But then I sort of thought about what the possibilities were because of it. And I was like, ooh, maybe this is going to be, the next movie could be very ambitious. And we'll talk, I guess we can talk about it in a second.
Yeah. I also did feel like the movie was a little overstuffed. So you had lots of characters that were in like two scenes. And so that you didn't really get to know. And this is sometimes a problem with Marvel as well. But like Hera, like even Alfred, Jim, like Commissioner Gordon had like one scene. There, and you have these great actors, so it can be a little distracting when you got J.K. Simmons. You have these.
Lawrence Fishburne was the same as well.
Yeah, and so was Perry White in the movie?
Yeah, he was in like one. I think he came in two scenes in Lois Lane. One was about her asking for a helicopter, and that was and it was like, we can barely afford to do it for work. Why would you want one for work reasons? And then she's like, that's for personal reasons. Like, oh, okay, that's fine. Yeah, just take a helicopter. Take a helicopter.
Or was that in Batman v Superman, or was that in Justice League? Did she need the helicopter? Or both?
No, actually, that is Batman vs Superman. That's,
yeah.
It's my recent watching. It's melt into my mind. Yeah.
I don't think Perry White was in this one. I can't remember if that, because there was that scene in her office, where she talks about doing the fluff pieces and whatever. And this was the only one of these movies that I liked Lois, because she's been pretty annoying up until now, in my opinion. So. Yeah. Especially Batman v Superman.
Oh, yeah.
She was pretty annoying.
Yeah. She was annoying.
Yeah. But, the ending credits, I felt like I didn't have enough information. I guess I'm just not knowledgeable enough about, I guess that's Deathstroke.
Yeah, so we'll talk about the first one first, maybe.
Yeah.
And then, so the first one was very Whedon-esque.
Yes.
With the race between between Superman and the Flash, and it's very much Whedon doing his nerd Easter egg there, because it's an ongoing thing probably since the '60s, where they've had on many occasions Superman and the Flash have a race.
Oh, okay.
And to see who, because it's obviously one of those things that people have written into DC and asked who's the fastest out of the two. But the thing is that they've never announced the winner, because they've always had this, like, in the middle of the race, they've always had to save the day for some reason. So throughout the years, they've never actually announced who is fastest.
That's funny. Well, and the whole brunch thing, that kind of reminded me of like shawarma in the Avengers.
Oh, yeah, it is a bit like the shawarma, yeah.
It's kind of reminded me of that. That was funny. I thought. And yeah, so I liked that first end credits. That was funny. And then the last one, like I said, I felt like I didn't have enough information as a casual fan, because Deathstroke means nothing to me, but like people were like excited about it. So I don't know. It's like, I guess I didn't really understand.
Yeah. So Deathstroke. So Deathstroke, I can see why people were excited, because he was a regular character in Arrow for a long time.
Oh, okay.
Well, at least for a season, and I think he's back in this new season as well. And I think he's been in some of the Batman games as well. But so people are sort of excited because they want to see him on the big screen, because he can be this badass character, and it's very much fits in the Snyder tone of the DC universe. In the sense that he's like this assassin, and he's sort of got a healing factor. He's actually the character which they based Deadpool off. Obviously, Deadpool, they went down and sort of went left instead of right with him. But yeah. But the Lex Luthor part of it, it was just like, oh no, again.
Yeah. Well, I didn't really understand when he says we create our own league. Wasn't that Suicide Squad, or is there another league of bad guys?
So they at least in the comics, they've had throughout the years the Injustice game. So it's a similar concept to the Justice League, but it's villains created their own team.
So that's different than Suicide Squad.
It is different than Suicide Squad in the sense that Suicide Squad is like a government agency or a government team, and they're sort of forced against their will. But this one's more a coalition between villains.
So who's in the Injustice League? It's
changed over the years, and it's just been like randos pretty much who do, depending on who was. It very much depended on who was in the Justice League at the time, so they could sort of match their villains together pretty much. But so I'm basing it off this. They probably have Black Manta. That have obviously Deathstroke is going to be in it. Lex Luthor. They probably have a Wonder Woman villain. Whoever's going to be in the Flash movie, I'm assuming they'll put the villain for that in there. So it's a matter of whoever they have as the lineup is they'll match a parallel.
That one will be an interesting one for me, because I'm just not a big villain person, so it doesn't really interest me that much. But who knows? I guess it could be good with the right writing. It could be good.
Yeah, And so like I said, I was very much because they brought Lex Luthor back.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't like Lex Luthor in that sense. Because considering he's in the comics, and in other media, he's been a fantastic character. He's been that sort of because he's just he's human. He just still his intellect, and he's obviously got unlimited resources. But over the years, he's had this fantastic characterization as well, where you sort of go, "Oh, this guy is very much a villain."
I wish that they would do Lex Luthor like they did in Smallville. That's the Lex Luthor that I like personally. I don't know. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I do want to say that I think that the animated film from this year called Justice League Dark was much better than this movie. And I thought it was very entertaining. I actually read the Zatanna comics, and I really thought they were great. Yeah. And I thought she was a really cool character. I don't know. I just thought she was this cool. She kind of reminded me of She-Hulk in the sense that she was strong, she was sexy, but also like powerful. It's different because she's magic, where She-Hulk is strength. But I don't know. I just thought they had a similar kind of tone to them, and I really enjoyed them. And I liked her in that movie. I also liked Constantine a lot. I thought he was cool character. And I would encourage anybody that either felt disappointed by this or that liked this, check that out, because I think the animation was solid, and especially after how horrible I personally thought I thought the Killing Joke was just awful. I hated it. And so if you have a bad taste in your mouth, then give that one a shot, because I think it was definitely the best DC film of the. It was the best. It was definitely the best Justice League film of the year, for sure.
Yeah, and definitely not as long either.
Yeah,
these animated films are pretty good at sticking to 80 something minutes. 90 minutes.
Yeah, and it was just fun. There were a lot of different characters that I had never been introduced to.
Yeah, they brought in a lot of obscure characters into that, like again the Demon, Swamp Thing.
Yeah. It was good. And they didn't even need Batman in the movie. They really didn't, because he was just kind of, I don't know. He didn't really fit in the movie. But anyway, so I'd recommend checking that out if you haven't seen it. Check out Justice League Dark. But anyway, okay. So I think we basically covered everything in the movie.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. This was fun to talk about, and it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. And we got Aquaman next year, and next year's going to be really interesting. I mean, we have 3 X-Men movies, I guess, coming out next year. We've got 3 Marvel movies with Black Panther, Infinity War, and Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be kept busy next year. So
definitely will be. You'll be seeing me a lot.
I know. So thanks so much. So where can people find you?
So I'm at howtolovecomics.com. You can find me there, where How to Love Comics is very much about a website about helping people who are into who want to get into comics or are just confused about them. And if you're interested in reading Justice League comics, I have a great article at the top of the homepage at the moment on the 10 Justice League comics stories you should read. And it's a great mixture of old and new and different tones. So if you're looking for something good to read, if you've got some good Justice League, if you decide that this movie was a bit crap and you know I want something good, check out those stories. You can't go wrong with those.
Great.
You can also find me on Twitter, so at How to Love Comics, or if you want to directly talk to me, my personal one, you can come follow me as well. The personal one, it's just Trevor Van Az at Twitter.
Awesome. I'll have all of that in the description section, and you can follow me at Smiling LDS Girl on social media. And my blog is 54 Disney Reviews. You can follow Rachel's reviews on iTunes and YouTube. And so please subscribe and give us your ratings and things for those sources. And thanks so much. And we'll talk again. I guess next up is Black Panther.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And we're looking forward to Black Panther. I think it might be pretty good.
Yeah, hopefully. It looks great. So, all right. Well, thanks. And we will talk again soon.
Bye.